Through a strong narrative and gameplay loop, 12 minutes is able to provide a unique adventure of survival and tension. Like other games featuring time loops, though, it sometimes struggles to give players full agency and features, which results in some repetitive gameplay. We're here to tell you why. This is Daryl.
And this is Dion. And this is Where We Stand. All right, let's start off with narrative and player agency. You know, this game has a very strong narrative for me, and it's compelling throughout the experience. I mean, as I'm playing this game, you kind of find out more over time, right? It's not all given to you.
No.
You start off walking in, and you walk into your room, which you never leave again.
As soon as you walk down that hallway, it's like, okay, oh crap, I forgot my keys. Oh, there it is. Or there's my spare. And then as soon as you enter that room, that's when the game actually begins. It gets you familiar with the controls initially, though. That's what the hallway is for.
Yeah, it just gives you a slow, quick intro to the game. And then you get in that room. Once you're in that room, you start learning slowly about the game, right? There's no like big cutscene or anything like that. It just drops you into the world and you start learning a little bit about the little tiny apartment you're in.
It is very tiny. I'm like, it's perfect. It's clearly perfect for two people, but even for me, I'm like, that's too small.
Exactly. No, it's tiny. It's very, very tiny for me. And you know, as you're playing through, the game allows you to keep experimenting and unravel new actions and truths. I thought that was super cool to the narrative. You know, you start, it's like a mystery. You know, you start off like, okay, this is the person here. Oh, I'm going to have this nice little dinner. And boom, you figure out, you know, that someone is coming to hurt you. And that's as much as kind of we can say. That's like the intro. And then you have to figure out how you're going to get through that 12 minutes.
In my experience, the first loop that happens is I kind of just let the night play out. Because I wanted to see, okay, I've played games that have had time loop scenarios before, and I am a firm believer in let it play out the first time. just let it happen. Do whatever, in this case, your wife tells you to do, and you do it. Don't try and break the loop immediately. Touch and grab everything as well, because you don't have a lot of time. As Dion said, you got a really finite amount of time, this isn't like real life 12 minutes. Not really. No. It's more like what, 8 in real life?
Probably around 8. You're just
10 max.
It plays out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and oh man, you don't realize how much time it gives you until well, everything starts coming to a head. In fact, this is probably a good time for me to jump into the gameplay loop, if you don't mind. There are so many ways to get information, but it really comes down to a combination of how you put the pieces you find together. Sometimes, I'm going to put it this way. It's essentially, you know when you're playing a Souls game or any horror game, whatever, and you just say, fuck it, and run down the hallway screaming?
Like, I just got to get through this, please.
That's exactly what you do in this game. Just do some random shit. You know, click on that wall, look at that painting for all of the first loop, and see what happens. Lock the door, something. You know, your wife will be doing things too that'll give you some heads up.
Context?
Yeah, some context
maybe, and some heads up, or hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah, in fact, the first time that happened, in my first loop, what I ended up doing was knocking myself out for 5 minutes because there's a light switch in there that is finicky. And I was like, oh, and his wife, I think, it was like, wow, good thing you were wearing shoes, or the husband said, good thing I was wearing shoes. Like, oh yeah, I could have died. Which, you know, by the way, wouldn't have really hurt anything, because if you've played any loop game before, you dying just means you start that loop over. So that's actually a way that you can, you know, if you find that you mess up, then just die. Or if you don't want to die, and I'm just going to spell this out for you now, it's not a spoiler, just walk out of the apartment. Because like Dion and I alluded to earlier, you see that hallway once in the game. After that, you're just stuck in that room. I tried straight up abandoning my wife. I was like, later, and I couldn't. Nope. Loop repeated.
Yeah, I got tired of dying.
Yeah.
What I will say, during that gameplay loop, I think this kind of bothered you more than me, actually. Sometimes the options were a little limited. Like, yes. You had to do specific things, and you could do them in a little different order, or maybe you could figure out another way, but there were specific things. And I remember being, it was mostly okay for me. The only one that got me was at the end, and how you had to figure out the ending part and what you had to do there.
Was a little sloppy.
There's only one way, and it just didn't work well, right? And the game wants you to do something very specific and do it at a specific time. And if you weren't able to do that, you failed. Like, I knew what I had to do, and I still had to retry 4 times because I couldn't get it just right for the game. So it kind of limits you in some places.
To give this game its credit, it does give you a lot of different ways to kind of like speed up the day or night or whatever. For the most part, like, I don't think this would qualify as a spoiler either, and if it does, you're not going to hear it. Obviously, the first thing you're going to want to do once you realize I'm stuck in a time loop is maybe I should tell my wife I'm stuck in a time loop. At first, you can point out different things. I'm not going to tell you how, but you can point out a few things to prove that you're stuck in a time loop. Your wife will believe you, and then after that, after a while, the game will just be like, okay, he's going to spell it all out to his wife because he's done it enough times where he can just tell her rather than you having to do everything yourself. And I really appreciate the fact that it does that.
Yes. I was worried about that, actually, as I was playing. I was like, this is going to be awful. And they did do that. So that did help. And you don't feel the repetition that quickly because of that. That was A+.
And you can fast forward most of the dialogue. Most of it. Not all of it, which leads to, again, the problem that you have towards the end where you're kind of just waiting for like 4 real life minutes to get to the one part where you're trying to do what you got to do, but the game doesn't give you the agency that is necessary for you to do what you have to do, which was your issue.
Right.
It was my issue too, but my issue leaned more on the fact that there were certain combinations of things I wanted to do that the game would not let me. And let's just say I wanted to give my wife something. Instead of giving it to her, something else happened. I'm like, I should be able to give her this particular item. Why? Is that too easy? You could have just had a loop again after I give it to her. But no, it's. I'm not going to tell you what happens because it's pretty it's pretty cool. I don't want to describe it as cool, but it's
cool.
worth it. Trust me, it's
cool
worth
is the
it.
word you chose.
Yes, cool.
Okay, all right.
But my point still stands. The options are limited to the point where it's like, you were this close to letting me have, at least for me personally, full agency. But I get why you couldn't do it, but it still frustrated me. And that's just a fault of a lot of time loop games.
Right, and I think there's a limit to what they can do as well, just because of there's just so many possibilities. They have to limit them, and I get it. I do have a couple more points I wanted to hit. The short time limit, I think it does a good job of getting you tense. I don't know what it is about these type of things, but for me,
it's very tense.
Even horror, right? It's the same situation for me. Kind of, I know that's a weird comparison, really. But it's the
makes
same
sense
thing.
To me.
It's just I'm tense the whole time. Like I'm over here, crunching up. Like, ooh, I don't know what's gonna happen. Actually, I do know what's gonna happen, and I'm just not looking forward to it the whole time.
When you don't, when you're playing a horror game, it's one thing. Before you die, you don't want to walk down the dark hallway. But once you're there, your curiosity kind of takes over. At least for me, it takes over, and I'm willing to like look around and take my time and stuff. But when you're walking down a dark hallway and you know what's coming, when you see that enemy type in a horror game, you know what to expect. And you're like, I don't like it. No, get away from me. Versus.
Dreading it.
Exactly. Versus this game where I say jokingly, but also kind of seriously, the only enemy type you really have to worry about besides the actual threat that walks through your door to hurt you and your wife is your wife in of herself. Like I walk in there after the loop, after the husband, gets done having a panic attack or whatever after the last loop ends, and I'm like, oh no, she's in the shower right now. Okay, she's humming. I have to grab this item. I have to grab this item. I have to grab this item. Crap, she's on that part. She's on that one melody. She's gonna step out soon. Oh no, grab this item. Turn this on. Finish repairing. That she's like flirtatiously going, hey there.
Can't get to that door.
Hey there.
And like, no shit, no,
Yes.
get away from me. Get away from me. And like, I'm gonna lose 5 seconds to you kissing me. Stop.
I didn't hear you come in. Best night ever. Guess?
Who made dessert? Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Thanks. That sounds great. In a sec.
Okay. Rude.
That killed me the whole time.
It's terrifying. Well, not terrifying, but it's like you realize you ran out of time when that
Every
happens.
time. And I think this kind of goes into the repetitive nature. We kind of hit it, but I want to just make sure, we talk about it a little bit. After a while, after you've done, 20 loops, then it gets repetitive. That whole hey thing. Well, that one's actually funny because you're like tense trying to get as much done before she does it. But other than that, you're sometimes you can't skip the dialogue, or you have to go through that experience again, or you have to keep reminding your wife once you break through what's happening, that stuff. And I get why you do it, but I think for me, I just start not to like it after a while. Then I'm just dreading it. By the time I'm at the end of the game, I was just very tired of repeating the same thing, and I'm like, I'm so frustrated. So I did end up in frustration towards the end, which that's the only thing I didn't really like.
And it makes sense, and it definitely makes sense. Now, don't get me wrong. I know you, the viewer, are probably thinking, hey, it's a game about time loops. Of course it's going to be repetitive. But the problem is, and this is probably what Dion's is alluding to when he says this, is it doesn't do enough to differentiate or try and deviate from how repetitive it can be. Yes, we get that there are key things that are supposed to repeat so you know where you're at during the loop and whatnot, if you're not pausing the game and looking at the clock. But the thing is, much like before when I said that the husband will go into explanations, and after a few loops, he'll eventually shorten his explanations, get straight to the point, and this standard. Heck, when your wife kisses you for the first time, that's when you get in there before the loop even starts. And you kiss her. It's lovely. It's like, yeah, I haven't seen you all day. Ooh, nice. Yeah, I don't know why I described it that way either. But after the first few loops, she only gets a chance to peck him on the lips, and he just says, not now, get away from me, and stuff like that. But there aren't enough variations of that to keep it fresh, so that leads it to feeling repetitive. If you had 3 different versions, I'd say 3 is a good number, of him saying not now, like, not now, could you just give me a moment, hey, just not today, or I stink, or something. I don't know, something that would break up that monotony. You could still have the same loop and it would still accomplish the same thing, but I don't know. I get where you're coming from with it.
Yeah, it gives you a break. There's just a couple more, or maybe just one more thing I want to hit before we give our final thoughts. And I just want to give the game credit on its attention to detail and its characters. I mean, there's not many characters.
The cast is phenomenal.
And they're just so good, right? Like the characters are amazing. Like the guy, they all have a backstory, and you start learning about the backstory, and it gets trippy for every single character, honestly.
And everyone felt you felt things.
Oh yes, and it's natural. It feels very natural. You naturally learn about the characters, and I really enjoyed that. I think we both really enjoyed that, and then I just want to give credit for the attention to detail. So the things like get away from me, or how you respond to certain situations, their attention to detail is very good. And most things you're doing seems like a very realistic action, except for the one that you explained is the only one that I really found. But for me, I think most of them have been, it's pretty much what you expect, or a reaction you expect. And I think that was really well done.
I highly agree with that. Also, if that's not enough for you, the 3, I'm pretty sure it's just 3 voice actors in this game, or the 3 actors in this game. You got, what was his name? Avery McAvoy, I believe. James. His name is James McAvoy. MC Yavoy, you get it. I believe he was I remember him mostly as Professor Xavier in the recent reboot X-Men movies, and a few other things before that. You have Daisy Ridley and you have Willem Dafoe. It's just a great cast overall, and the performances are great. But that's just an extra stick I thought I'd throw in there for anyone who was wondering.
Awesome. Well, let's hit our final thoughts on the game. So I'm going to go first. Thank you very much. 12 minutes is great. It is a very good game. 100%. Strong characters, very interesting narrative. It's difficult in some situations to figure out the tricks or what you have to do, which I think can be good. Might be frustrating for others, but it's mostly a fun experience, and it's definitely worth it. It's definitely worth every minute you can give to it, and I hope they give this style another try and see if they can improve on what they did here and maybe a different type of story. I think that would be awesome. There are a few drawbacks. The repetitive nature, I think, really bothers me towards the end of the game. It's only the very end, and I don't think that's going to bother everyone. And sometimes with the limited options, that gets somewhat annoying. But I think with the length of the game, you mostly get through that. So my final thoughts, game is good and definitely worth playing. Daryl?
I actually agree with you on that. There's a lot to like about the game, and I'd say one of the only things that bothers me is the fact that not, at least for the things that I wanted to do, not everything was allowed. There were some things I wanted to do that I thought was just logical to do, but the game's like, no, sorry, you can't do that, either because it might, I'm assuming, be the easy way out, or simply put, they probably thought we're not gonna provide that many options for the player. Get used to the tools that we set, and that's it. It's a bummer, but it didn't ruin the experience for me. It was still a very, very good story and whatnot. And if you're really that quick on the uptake, the game on average on howlongtobeat.com is like 4 hours. I'm pretty sure if you're even faster than that, it's not a long game. It just really depends on how long it takes you to put everything together. That's it for me. I
will just say you do like to break games, so maybe that's why too.
That's also true. I do love breaking games. I can't help it. You have a nice loop there. Let me break it.
Well, alrighty. I think that's all we got for now. Thank you all for stopping through to listen here at DuoQ. If we might have glossed over something, feel free to say so in comments. And don't forget to share or leave a like. Next time you're waiting for a party or searching for a lobby, feel free to tune in again while you wait. See ya.
See you guys later. See you guys later. See you guys later. See you guys later. See you guys. Do you ever get the feeling of deja vu?